Video games offer beautiful, brilliant moments of escapism, giving players a power fantasy where they can be towering space marines kicking butt and taking names, or adventurers uncovering uncharted lands and saving the day. But they can also provide punishing, crushing reality checks where you want to do nothing more than turn the console off and go outside for a quiet breather. After all, there is a reason why the term rage quit has become synonymous with the medium, as there's plenty of amazing releases that pride themselves on being difficult challenges. Sometimes though, they'll drop all pretense and hit you with a frustrating roadblock that, whether it's because of the controls or the introduction of a brand new set of mechanics, can appear impossible, and nothing more than a sick joke on behalf of the developers. Even as games develop, they've never really been able to eliminate this completely, and all we can do is complain about them in lists like this. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 most frustrating video game moments of all time. Number 10. Following the Blood, Max Payne. Kicking this list off with a classic, when you think about Max Payne, 3 things probably spring to mind. Slow motion diving over tables while shooting dudes in the face, Max's weird scrunched up face from the original game, and that damn level where you have to follow a blood trail in total darkness. The level itself admittedly sounds fairly straightforward, but when you reach an area where the trail splits off and have to awkwardly feel your way around in the dark to the correct destination, no doubt falling to your death a good few times before figuring it out, everything goes to pot. It is a notorious offender for a few reasons. 1, early 3D platforming wasn't exactly a fine art, and often players had to trial and error their way through sections like this. And 2, there's the argument that a 3D platforming puzzle section had no place in a game that was all about firing a million bullets into the bodies of bad guys while pulling off sick slow motion dives. Number 9, literally anyone's Mario Maker level, Mario Maker. If aliens arrived on Earth this very second and the very first taste of human culture they were made aware of was the user-created levels on Mario Maker, they'd probably get straight back in their UFO and hightail it back to their home planet. That's because the majority of players who set out to craft a level in Mario Maker want nothing more than to see everyone who plays it in tears, taking pleasure in the fact that only a handful of people have what it takes to get to the end. There are so many notoriously challenging maps that have been created for the series, but there is a method to the madness. For one, you need to have finished a level you've created before it goes live, so there's always the knowledge that nothing is totally impossible and someone must have done it before you. As always, it's the hope that kills you. Number 8, the Turbo Tunnel, Battletoads. Battletoads almost feels like it was solely designed to kick the optimism out of kids and tell them that the real world holds nothing for them but pain and misery. And no level exemplified that better than the Turbo Tunnel, which has the absolute gall to be only the 3rd mission in this whole carnival of despair. It starts off relatively simple enough, but it's once you jump onto a speeder and have to navigate through a bunch of obstacles that you only have a split second to register, by the way, that everything completely crumbles. The combination of the speed of the screen with the limited view of the 2D camera makes even the fastest reactions pointless, and you'll hurtle to your death time after time, failing jumps that you'll swear down are impossible. It's one of those levels where the upbeat music in the background will turn into your worst enemy, where you'll be fast asleep at night only to jolt awake worried that you can hear it coming from the TV, where a single note from it will transport you back to your living room as a little kid, trying and failing to get through this level before crying to your parents. Number 7, The High Road, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. What everyone forgot when returning to Crash Bandicoot for the first time in years was that the original game in particular was damn difficult. You needed precision platforming abilities to get through levels, especially the one that had you suspended in the air with only a rickety bridge between you and certain doom. The high road was always a nightmare no matter which version of Crash you experienced it on, but it's the Insane Trilogy incarnation that's made it on this list because of one particular reason. The developers completely messed up the controls. The original trilogy adopted their own unique control schemes for each game, meaning that the jumping and landing was slightly different and tailored to the levels of each particular title. To streamline the experience and make moving from one game to another more cohesive, the developers of the Insane Trilogy used one jumping system as standard, and it wasn't the one designed for the high road. Consequently, those pixel-perfect jumps are just a little bit off, but it's enough to send you to your death again and again and again and again and again and again and again until you can't take it anymore. Number 6, Ornstein and Smough, Dark Souls. You just knew that these two bad lads had to be on this list somewhere. Ornstein and Smough are a couple of tough sons of bitches. And if you've even thought about playing Dark Souls, you'll no doubt have heard stories about how they're the game's biggest test of might. And sadly for you, the reputation this dynamic duo amass for themselves is not unearned. Just when you think you have a handle on the lumbering Smough, you'll be destroyed by the lightning quick, pun intended, Ornstein. One of them is difficult enough, but accounting for both can leave you with your head in your hands, desperate to call in a summon from another player. However, it's that reason why Ornstein and Smough aren't higher on this list. Teaming up with another player online will make the fight a breeze, while there is a sense of reward and satisfaction that comes with learning to beat them, something which isn't gained from the cheaper entries on this list. And speaking of, number 5, Supply Lines, GTA San Andreas. Every single time a GTA game puts you in control of a remote control aircraft, you're probably better off snapping the disc in half than suffering what you're about to be put through. Not content with breaking everyone's spirit with the bomb defusal mission in Vice City, Rockstar doubled down on this gimmick in San Andreas, while doing absolutely nothing to iron out the kinks that made that experience so nauseating. Supply Lines was a side quest in Rockstar's last GTA of the PS2 era, and has gone down in history as an impossible test of might. You had to wrestle with the controls just to get the mini plane to fly correctly, and once you got the hang of that, you'd then run out of fuel and have to try the whole thing over again. And if you don't want to take my word for it that it is the worst thing since unsliced bread, even David Cross, the voice of Zero, the other character involved in this mission, hated it too, saying, quote, "So annoying, I hated it, I couldn't effing do it, the RC thing, it's impossible," end quote. So there you have it, even the guy in the game couldn't do it. Number 4, sneaking through Outer Haven, Metal Gear Solid 4. For as good as the Metal Gear Solid series is, it's no stranger to frustrating moments. The original MGS had the momentum-killing PAL card sequence, the second had you escorting EE, and the third had you constantly feeding Ava every 5 minutes so she didn't starve to death. However, none of these hold a candle to Metal Gear Solid 4's final stealth challenge. It was tempting to put most of Chapter 3 on here, but it's the shipboard of Outer Haven that takes the cake. In this mission, you're tasked with getting to one side of the ship to the other. It all sounds relatively simple, but the issue is there's so many enemies, the place is in constant caution mode, and there just so happens to be 2 geckos protecting the door you need to go through, which, by the way, you need about 10 seconds of total freedom to actually open. Even worse, if you do trigger alert mode and are seen, the only way to reset it is by dying. Even with a walkthrough, this is tedious trial and error at its worst. And sure, you can equip your most powerful weapons and blast your way to victory, but if you're playing on higher difficulties or wanting a stealth-only experience, this can appear impossible. Number 3, escorting Natalia, Goldeneye. While video game developers took to some features like and forgive me from using a Jules gimmick here, duck to wet bread, nailing things like first-person shooting or 2D platforming within the space of a couple of years, others eluded them for decades. One of the biggest examples is escort missions, but sadly for players anyway, that didn't stop devs putting them into their games. Any player who grew up on titles in the late 90s and early 2000s will no doubt shudder at even the mention of an escort mission. But that disgust will jump up to another level if you happen to say Natalia and Goldeneye in the same sentence. Rare's classic James Bond shooter, on all accounts, was a first-person revolution, but it also featured one level which almost tanked everything. The basic setup is pretty simple. You escort the weapons-free Natalia through a bunch of rooms as she goes about her computer business, all the while protecting her from goons. Every game has featured a similar scenario, but few have given the companion character an AI as brain-dead as Natalia's. If she doesn't get herself killed by walking into bullets, yours or the enemy's, to be honest she's not really picky, you'll die by putting Bond in danger to make sure no goons get close to her. You just can't win. Number 2, the Water Temple, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Even if, for whatever reason, you haven't played Ocarina of Time, you've probably heard horror stories about the game's water temple. Like a lot of releases at the time, controlling a character while they're swimming underwater was about as elegant as an elephant doing ballet, so an entire level where this was essential was already a huge no-no. That's annoying enough, but it's not bad enough to get it a spot on this list, especially so high up. And that's because it's all the additional hoops you have to jump through to complete the stage that elevates it to god-tier crap housery. For one, the level of the water is changed by levers all around the area, which you have to turn back and forth to complete the puzzles, but the game doesn't tell you what each mechanism is linked to. Throw on top of that a mind-numbing pair of boots that need to be equipped and unequipped so you can sink, which have to be manually selected from the menu screen each time you need them, and the entire thing just devolves into one annoyance after another. Number 1. Winning the race, Mafia. Every single entry on this list so far has detailed a frustrating mess of a video game moment, but few have been so broken that the devs themselves had to admit they royally messed up. Enter the original Mafia, an ambitious crime game that attempted to push cinematic storytelling forward and break its shooting segments up with a bunch of inspired ideas, including a track race you needed to win. In theory, this section is a great way to break up the pacing, but the problem was that the tools the developers created the level with were not the ones the vast majority of players had at their disposal at home. The section was made with the driving wheel in mind, with the controls fine-tuned to this rather than a controller. Of course, this presented a few problems, number 1 being that only a fraction of players would have a wheel handy, and 2, even if they did own one, they probably wouldn't think to switch to it purely for a single level in a shooting game. Consequently, everyone attempted to wrangle with the controller and guide this period-authentic race car around the track to no avail. Even finishing it all was an issue, never mind mastering the controls to come first. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are there any frustrating moments you think deserved a spot on this all-time list? Or did these cause you as much pain as they did me? Either way, while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. I've been Josh, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.